Ronald Devereux Edward Crosby is charged with obtaining money by false pretenses by the fraudulent management of investment companies and unit trusts of which he was a director. Mr. Crosby pleads not guilty and has elected to conduct his own defence. The jury in this case is selected from members of the public who are eligible for jury service. The judge, Mr. Justice Warrington, has just agreed to Crosby conducting his defence from the body of the court.
Members of the jury, it is possible that some or all of you may have heard of the defendant. His name may have been familiar to you long before you heard anything about this case because he has enjoyed a certain amount of fame or perhaps notoriety. Mr. Crosby has been a great favorite of the gossip columnists. Many names have been linked with his, many of them distinguished and honorable. Mr. Crosby, as you will hear, has a taste for expensive acquisitions. And for 2 years or so of his life, he found a way to indulge those tastes. Grand houses, grand motor cars, the inevitable yacht, and when he entertained, there was champagne and caviar. But we are less concerned with what Mr. Crosby and his guests ate or drank than we are with the less intoxicating question: who paid for it? Now, you may have heard the term financial wizard. It has been applied to Mr. Crosby. But the evidence will show that he was, in fact, only a financial conjurer. Now, you and I, as laymen, may find the sleight of hand hard to follow at times. But the heart of the thing is really very simple. Mr. Crosby induced other people to part with their money on the understanding that he would, with care and skill, invest it for them in some venture or another. Now, some of this money he did invest, wisely or otherwise. But an ever-increasing proportion of it was used to finance his own lavish style of living.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are George Staunton, and you are a company's inspector with the Department of Trade and Industry.
I am.
Would you tell us, please, when Mr. Crosby's activities first came to your notice?
He was chairman and managing director of Realm and Landhope Securities, a company that came under the scrutiny of the department as a result of the annual audit for the year 1972-73, which was carried out by Mr. Sayer of Pike, Watson, Maynard. Mr. Sayer found that he was unable to sign the account of Realm and Landhope Securities without qualification.
Could you explain, please, what that means?
Yes. Because of the state of the company's accounts, Mr. Sayer was unable to sign a true and complete statement of the trading position of the company without referring to certain matters, certain irregularities, should I say.
And that is what is meant by qualifying the accounts?
Yes.
What were these irregularities that disturbed Mr. Sayer?
Yes. Well, if I may. No, it's not, sorry, it's the wrong one. It's that.
Exhibits
yes,
1 to 46, please.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's quite right, Mr. Staunton.
I'll read you the first paragraph of Mr. Sayer's qualification of the account.
Yes, please.
In the opinion of the auditors, the state of the credit balances of Realm and Landhope Securities cannot be represented by these accounts unless the sum of £238,000 is written off against debts which the auditors believe not to be recoverable, or to be improperly secured against the company's other shares. This is the sum of loans to directors and others detailed in the schedule attached.
Now, if I understand that correctly, Mr. Sayer is saying that the company made certain loans that the auditors considered to be improper.
That is very clearly what he is saying here.
Who were the directors referred to?
Mr. Crosby and Mr. Dimitri Leonidas, and two men called Samuel Howes and Lionel Harper, who were acting as nominees for a company of which Mr. Crosby and Mr. Leonidas were also directors.
You examined the records of Realm and Landhope Securities, did you?
Yes, of that company and of other companies with which Mr. Crosby is associated.
Did you find yourself agreeing with the auditors?
Yes, I took the view that the loans were improper according to the provisions of the Companies Act.
Now, before we go on, Mr. Staunton, we should perhaps understand whose money it was that was being loaned. Where did the money come from?
Well, the money came from anyone who had invested in the company or anyone who had invested in 2 unit trusts that were managed by the company. That is, Sterling Realm Unit Trusts and Landhope Britannia Unit Trusts. The money loaned by Mr. Crosby's company to other companies and to Mr. Crosby and to other people was money that was managed on trust on behalf of a great many people. Now, these people had invested in the company and had invested in the unit trusts. If I may say so, at this point, the man in the street has a rather confused idea of what they call high finance, but it is really very simple. Finance is simply a rather impressive term for other people's money, and a financier is somebody who disposes of other people's money. Now, if he does so according to his word and the law of the land, all well and good, but if he does so, disposes of it in any other way, then that is within the scope of the criminal law.
You are not suggesting, are you, Mr. Staunton, that there is anything either criminal or reprehensible in being a financier?
I hope I'm not saying that, my lord.
I should not like the jury to receive the impression that you were implying that.
No, I simply wish to make the point that a man who has free play with other people's money is in the way of obvious and ever-present temptations. He is therefore in a position of trust and must be scrupulous not to abuse that trust.
Yes, that is very clear.
I'm obliged, my lord. Now, Mr. Staunton, perhaps you could take us through the history of these loans. When was the first?
Yes, well, we're talking about March 1972. Landhope Investments loaned the sum of £20,000 to a Mr. Lionel Harper, who was acting as a nominee for Realm Securities. Now, Realm Securities and Landhope Investments were 2 separate companies, but they later merged to become Realm and Landhope Securities.
Let us not leap too far ahead. This, then, was a loan from one company to another through a nominee called Lionel Harper.
Yeah.
Was there any connection between these 2 companies?
The registered address of the 2 companies was the same, that is 22 Littlewood Street, London, West 10.
Was there any other connection?
Mr. Crosby was chairman and managing director of both companies.
Well, that would have been very convenient, wouldn't it? It would save travelling time, would it not?
Ah.
Who, by the way, was Mr. Harper?
Yes, well, I can't tell you very much about Mr. Harper. He's not been an easy man to get in touch with.
Have you been in touch with him?
No. The address that we have for Mr. Harper is a furnished flat in Ladbroke Grove, but he's no longer to be found there.
Did you find anything about him that would lead you to believe that he was a man of substance?
No, nothing at all.
Is he registered as a director of any company currently trading?
No.
So Landhope Investments loaned £20,000 to the seemingly insubstantial Mr. Harper. What security did the company hold for this loan?
It was the lease on 11 Virtue Gardens, Harpenden.
Was that a good and sufficient security?
I estimated its value at the time to be between £6,000 and £7,000.
I see. And was Mr. Harper the owner of this property, inadequate though it is?
No, the freehold was among the listed assets of Pell Mell Limited.
Oh, no, that's a company we haven't so far heard about. What can you tell us about Pell Mell Limited?
Well, Pell Mell Limited held at that time 37% of the issued shares in Realm Securities.
And who controlled this company, Pell Mell?
The directors of the company were Mr. Crosby and Mr. Dimitri Leonidas. Yeah.
Well, I hope the jury doesn't find this curious circular trail too confusing. What do you know about Mr. Leonidas?
Well, again, not very much. I gather that he's no longer resident in this country.
Well, perhaps Mr. Crosby could help you there. Have you asked him for news of Mr. Leonidas?
Yes, Mr. Crosby was unable to help me. He tells me that he's not been in communication with the gentleman since he sold, that is, Mr. Crosby, sold his shares in Pell Mell Limited, and that was in September 73.
And what has happened to Pell Mell Limited since then?
They went into liquidation in March 1974.
What was the state of its affairs at the time it went into liquidation?
Well, as far...
I'm sorry, my lord.
Do you have an objection to this question, Mr. Crosby?
Yes. I don't know whether it's relevant what became of Pell Mell Limited after I'd severed all connection with the company, is it? It doesn't seem relevant to me.
Is it, Miss Madison? What relevance does it have?
Pell Mell Limited, my lord, crops up a number of times in transactions to do with Mr. Crosby's various companies. I think it is relevant to know something about that company and the state of its affairs when it ceased to trade.
But you do accept that Mr. Crosby had no connection with that company at the time it ceased to trade?
Oh, I do accept that, my lord.
Then I can see that Mr. Crosby has a point. I shall not allow the question.
If I may beg your lordship's indulgence, this Mr. Leonidas was closely associated with the accused in a number of dealings. If he were still in this country, I do not doubt that he would be on trial with Mr. Crosby.
That may or may not be so, Miss Madison. But he is not on trial with Mr. Crosby. No, I shall not allow the question.
As your lordship pleases. Then I go back to the loan of £20,000. Now, on the face of it, this would seem to be an elaborate method of shifting money from Mr. Crosby's left-hand pocket into his right. What did his right-hand pocket, in this case Realm Securities, do with the money?
Realm Securities bought shares in Land Hope Investments.
One moment, Mr. Staunton. Unless I have made some silly mistake, that would seem to be a complete circle.
Yes.
You are saying that one of Mr. Crosby's companies loaned money through a Mr. Harper to another of Mr. Crosby's companies, which then bought shares in the first company?
That is what I'm saying.
You are sure it was this money that was used to buy the shares?
Well, the shares were bought, and at that time, Realm Securities had virtually no other funds. That is a matter of record.
It is, of course, members of the jury, illegal for a company to finance dealings in its own shares.
Thank you, my lord. Would it be possible for a company artificially to boost the price of its own shares in this way?
Precisely, yes.
Did that happen in this case? Was the effect to boost the price of Land Hope investment shares?
Yes, the shares rose steadily during the period that we are talking about. Well, steadily is hardly the word. Rapidly. They went, where are we? They went from 18 pence to 29 pence from March to the end of April.
Wouldn't that have seemed a very remarkable rise in price?
Normally it would have, yes, but at this time shares in companies investing in the property sector were doing very well. You may remember there was something of a boom at the time in property.
And Land Hope Investments was in the property sector, was it?
The express purpose of the company was property and leisure investments.
And what property could Land Hope Investments list at that time amongst its holdings?
Well, I suppose there was the freehold on 11 Virtue Gardens.
Which was the security for a loan of about 3 times its value.
Yes, and then there was a 57-year lease on 22 Littleton Street.
Which was the registered office of the company.
That is right, yes.
Was there any other property?
Not at this time, no.
Well, I know that mighty oaks do grow from little acorns, but in the property line of country, that would surely be a very tiny acorn indeed, wouldn't you say?
Yes, it would seem so, yes.
EV Lawyers.
Inspector Rumbold, you arrested Mr. Crosby, you say, in July of 1976.
Yes, madam.
Would you tell us something about the circumstances leading up to that arrest?
I've been investigating Mr. Crosby's affairs since February 1975, when the Department of Trade informed us of certain facts relating to his business dealings. In August of 1975, I obtained a warrant for his arrest.
But he was not arrested until July of 1976. Why was that?
Mr. Crosby was not in this country, to my knowledge, between September of 1974 and July of 1976.
Why did he re-enter the country?
He arrived at Fulchester Airport on July the 18th under the impression that a buyer had been found for his house. He came to complete that transaction.
You say under the impression?
Yes, I say under the impression because I also had heard he'd found a buyer. It had come to my notice that the house, it was a house called Coppell in Ulverton Magna, had been put into the hands of agents to be sold. I spoke to the agents. They told me the owner was abroad and was asking $100,000 for it. I gather there was a certain amount of to and froing about the price before Mr. Crosby finally agreed on a figure of £85,000. That is what I was told.
Surely the agents were in position to complete such a sale. Why was it necessary for Mr. Crosby to be present?
Because I understand that the buyer wanted to pay a good part of the money in cash.
Were the agents acting for Mr. Crosby perfectly happy with this arrangement?
It would seem so. I believe the buyer was a bookie. I don't know whether that has any bearing.
And then you had, I suppose, just to wait in the hope that this would bring Mr. Crosby home.
That was the idea. If you're buying a signature for a lot of cash, you want to see the ink drying before you hand over. That's the line I thought he would take.
Clearly this deception worked.
I was almost surprised, yes. The daftest things do work. I was able to meet Mr. Crosby at the airport. I did meet him and I arrested him. He was later released on 2 sureties of £25,000.
Have you examined the records of Mr. Crosby's bank accounts?
There were 3 bank accounts we went into. A current account at Cornings Bank in Lombard Street, a deposit account at the same bank, and a current account at the Scottish Provincial Bank in Ladbroke Grove.
What was the state of this last account in December of 1971?
Oh, it was overdrawn by £158.
What about the other accounts at Cornings?
Well, these accounts were not opened until January 1972, but he placed £1,538 on deposit and later transferred £500 to open a current account.
Do you happen to know where he got this money?
It was left to him by his mother. I have seen a copy of the will.
Well, it seems he did not choose to pay off his overdraft with this money, but he opened 2 new accounts instead. Still, in spite of having 3 bank accounts, Mr. Crosby was not what you would call a rich man at this time, or did you find any other deposits?
No.
Where was the accused living at this time?
At 22 Littlewood Street, West 10.
Now, that is an address already familiar to the jury as the registered address of 2 companies run by Mr. Crosby. Did he own this house?
He inherited a lease with 57 years remaining from his mother.
We have heard that this lease was part of the assets of Landhope Investments. I take it this is the same lease?
Yes, madam.
What sort of house was it, by the way?
It was a big house, 4 floors, terraced, but it had gone down a lot. A very good house when it was built, but as I say, the area had gone down. They tell me it's coming up again now.
What sort of value?
Oh, I wouldn't like to hazard a guess.
So at that time, Mr. Crosby had a lease on a house of uncertain value and about £1,500 in the bank. Did he have any other property that you know of?
No, madam.
If we may look ahead a little, Inspector. What was the state of these accounts in the period before September 1974?
Well, in July of that year, Mr. Crosby's balance in the current account was £117,000, and in his deposit account, £16,000. These are the accounts at Cornings.
Are you quite sure you have them the right way round?
Yes, madam.
The very large amount was in the current account and the smaller on deposit?
Yes, madam.
What happened to these deposits between July and September?
Well, Mr. Crosby made a number of large withdrawals. 4 from the current account, 1 from the deposit account. This was over a period of 9 weeks, roughly fortnightly. He then closed both accounts.
You mean he withdrew the lot?
Yes, all in cash.
All in cash. What, by the way, was the state of his account at the Scottish Provincial?
Oh, that was still overdrawn. With the interest on the deposit, it was up to over £200.
Well, there had clearly been a considerable change in his fortunes in those 2 years. You've said that at about this time Mr. Crosby went abroad. Do you know how or when he went?
No, not the exact date.
Then how do you know he went abroad?
Well, he spent some time at a Hotel Sant Alcesti in Basel, madam, in Switzerland.
How do you know that?
Well, he paid the bill using his credit card.
So, in less than 3 years, Mr. Crosby went from the house in Littlewood Street to the Copples in Alberton Magna, and from the discomfort of a small overdraft to a condition of considerable wealth. Finally, he went to Rome, having withdrawn everything from the bank in cash.
Yes.
What salaries did he draw for his directorships?
The total of his drawings in salary, or do you want the individual figures?
The total will do.
Well, in the 3 years, 1971 to 73, in fees and salary, he drew £12,438. That's before tax.
Well, that seems quite modest, doesn't it? What figure, if any, do you have for his expenses during the same period?
As far as I can reach. This is for travel expenses, entertaining, goodwill, that sort of thing. I can find £34,000 accounted for.
That figure is almost 3 times what he drew in salary.
It is about that.
Yes. Well, we'd better go back to the beginning. How did Mr. Crosby come to be chairman and managing director of Landhope Investments?
Well, the company started life as the Burma Landhope Planters Company,
Oh,
ma'am.
now, that's another company we haven't so far heard about. Tell us how that came to be Landhope Investments.
Oh, Mr. Crosby inherited 100,000 shares in the company through his mother once again.
What was the issued share capital of the company at that time, Miss Madison?
I believe it was 200,000, my lord.
I see. So Mr. Crosby, in fact, inherited half the share capital of the company.
Precisely.
Thank you very much.
Please go on, Mr. Rumbold.
It seems to be an adventure in the 1920s to promote a tea planting scheme in Burma, madam.
Were these valuable shares that he inherited?
No, madam, they're almost worthless. To all intents and purposes, that company had long since vanished.
No tea plantations in Burma.
Oh, madam. Doesn't seem to have been a success, that scheme.
Then of what possible interest could they have been to Mr. Crosby?
Oh, they did have some attraction. Once he bought more, which he did, he had control of a public company.
A company that could be quoted on the stock exchange.
Exactly.
When did the company become Landhope Investments?
In January 1972, after Mr. Crosby took control, the new company was granted a new mandate for trading, which was to invest in property and leisure enterprises.
Starting, if I remember, with that small acorn, 22 Littlewood Street.
Yes, madam.
So Mr. Crosby now had a company whose shares could be bought and sold on the stock exchange should anyone wish to buy them. Did anyone buy them?
Realm Securities bought 9,000 of them at 15 pence each.
Now, if my arithmetic is all right, that's close to £1,500 worth.
Yes, madam.
It's about what Mr. Crosby had in the bank. Why should he, as Realm Securities, buy those shares?
Well, buying them did establish a price for them. That is all I can say.
But it's hard to believe that Mr. Crosby would have found other buyers at that price or any price. I mean, there was nothing to draw public attention to him or his company. Or was there?
Mr. Crosby received a great deal of publicity when he offered to put money into Hantley Town Football Club.
So he did. I have here, my lord, a copy of a newspaper of February the 23rd, 1972. It is Exhibit 29. It shows that Mr. Crosby and his company did receive considerable publicity. Would you read it, please, Mr. Rumbold?
There's a picture on page 3 of Mr. Crosby standing in front of the Hantley Town Football Club. The headline reads, "I'll buy town, says Tycoon Crosby." It goes on. "The Reds may be in the red and deep in trouble at the bottom of the table, but they're worth a cool $1,000,000 to city tycoon Ronald Crosby. The club is sitting on a gold mine, said Crosby yesterday. How can they be broke? He waved his arm toward Hantley's hallowed turf. Look at it, he said. That's a priceless piece of real estate. But club directors were reeling with shock yesterday after Mr. Million spelled out his plans for the club. Landhope Investments, the company Mr. Crosby heads, has plans that go far beyond mere football for the famous league ground.
It is common knowledge, my lord, that nothing came of Mr. Crosby's negotiations with this club except for a great deal of publicity for Mr. Crosby. Is it right, Inspector, that this newspaper refers to Mr. Crosby as a tycoon and Mr. Million?
Yes.
Was there anything in the state of Mr. Crosby's companies at that time to suggest that he could, in good faith, offer to put £1 million into a football club?
No. I was hoping I'd made that clear, madam.
The cases in Fulchester are fictitious. You can join us again tomorrow when the Queen against Crosby will be resumed in the Crown Court. Ronald Devereux Edward Crosby is charged with inducing investments contrary to the Fraud Act of 1958. He pleads not guilty and is conducting his own defence. The jury in this case is selected from members of the public whose names appear on the electoral register and who are eligible for jury service. The trial is in its second day, and the prosecution has called Nicholas Higgins into the witness box.
You are Nicholas Higgins?
Yes, I am.
And you live at White Lodge, Upton Vale, Essex.
That is correct, yes.
How long have you known Mr. Crosby?
6 or 7 years.
Where did you meet?
Yes, I believe that would be at the Old Russell Club.
What kind of club is that?
Oh, very agreeable. It's quite well known, I think. Bridge. It's a club where people play bridge.
It's known for that, is it?
Yes, it is more or less the raison d'etre.
And do they play for money?
Oh, yes. They play for money, yes.
For large stakes?
Depends on what you call large.
Well, how much would you expect to see won or lost on a rubber at the Old Russell Club? A few pounds? Tens of pounds? Hundreds?
Well, 100 or 2 would not be unusual. It would depend on the play and the players, but it would not be unusual.
Did you play often at the Old Russell Club? I mean, were you a regular?
I am often there. I don't always play, but yes, you could call me something of an habitué.
Was Mr. Crosby an habitué?
Yes,
Did he play frequently?
yes.
Did he play well?
Yes, I'd say he is a very skillful player.
My lord, may I object that I do not see where these questions lead. I admit I play bridge, but is that the question we're here to examine?
I trust that the relevance of these questions will appear in due course, Miss Madison.
It will, my lord. 6 or 7 years ago, through his membership of this club, Mr. Crosby began to move in certain circles, moneyed and influential circles. That fact was of crucial importance in his emergence as a financier.
Yes, I see. You may carry on.
Thank you. Mr. Higgins, would you please make it clear what kind of membership the Old Russell Club attracts?
Oh, all sorts. The oddest people are addicted to bridge.
Yes, but from what you've said, these particular addicts must have been fairly wealthy.
Oh, yes, I'd say pretty well heeled for the most part.
And to your knowledge, was Mr. Crosby pretty well heeled at this time? I mean, when he first started to play at the club?
Well, I didn't really know. He was good for his losses, but then he much more frequently won. He once told me he got by on what he won at bridge.
Did any regular partnership spring up between Mr. Crosby and any other player?
Yes, he and Lord Stambleton used to play a great deal together.
Did that association develop outside the realms of the Old Russell Club?
Yes, he used to turn up at Melching's. Crosby, I mean.
Melching's, I believe, is Lord Stambleton's home.
Yes, in Hampshire.
You say he used to turn up. I take it he was invited.
Oh, yes, of course. Lots of people used to turn up at Melching's. I mean, they still do. Lord Stambleton is, what's the word? Gregarious sort.
And during 1972 and 73, were you one of those who turned up at Melching's?
Pretty frequently.
Were there large parties staying at the house at these times?
Not usually large, a dozen or so.
At a place like Melching's, a dozen would be a fairly intimate gathering.
I'm not quite sure what you mean by that.
Well, I mean you would all have been on pretty close terms.
Yes, I suppose so.
If we leave out Mr. Crosby for the moment, the others would once again be pretty well heeled.
Very few paupers, yes.
In the circle of very few paupers, was Mr. Crosby generally liked?
Oh, I'd say yes. Yes, he had the knack of generally amusing people.
How did he amuse people?
Well, he played the piano a bit, and he could imitate people. And he was something of a raconteur.
A raconteur? You mean he told stories?
Oh, yes, tremendous stuff, you know, about his adventures in various parts of the world.
Did you take these to be true stories?
Well, people did, embroidered a bit in the telling, but yes, I suppose so.
Can you recall an instance? I mean, any particular adventure of Mr. Crosby's that sticks in your mind?
My lord, once again, this seems to me to be less than pertinent, if I may object. Does it matter what stories I may have told to entertain a house party on rainy days in the country?
Perhaps you would explain what point you are making, Miss Matterson.
Gladly, my lord. This testimony will, I hope, show that Mr. Crosby had a certain flair for fantasizing. Tall stories were part of his style, and tall stories are one kind of false pretense. The claims Mr. Crosby made about his companies were another kind of false pretense, another kind of tall story that he induced people to believe. The evidence will show how astonishingly plausible Mr. Crosby could be.
Yes. Where false pretenses are alleged, Mr. Crosby, plausibility is clearly a relevant question. You may carry on, miss.
Thank you, my lord. You were about to relate something, Mr. Higgins.
Yes. Well, I'm afraid I'm not a storyteller myself, but I do remember this
this extraordinary tale of Mr. Crosby's when he was a guest of some Arabian sheik. This was, out in the desert somewhere. I don't remember where it was supposed to be.
Could I offer to help the witness, my lord? It's a good story. I'd be pleased to tell it myself, if that'd be helpful.
I regard that as a flippant interruption, Mr. Crosby. If you do that
sorry.
again, I shall not take it lightly.
Sorry, my lord.
Go on, Mr. Akins.
Yes, well, anyway, this sheik chappie apparently had a positive mania for backgammon. It seems he taught Crosby the general idea, and they played practically day and night for a week. Anyway, the upshot was that Crosby cleans the chappie out entirely. Oil wells, everything. I can't remember about the wives, whether he had them as well. There was something about the wives. Well, whatever. Anyway, comes the time for Crosby's departure. No transport turns up. Sheik doesn't lay it on, you see. Miles from anywhere, nothing but sand, pretty well stuck. Well, of course, he's there for days, and it seems nobody ate, nobody drank. Sheik doesn't lay it on, you see. Perfectly polite and charming, it seems, but not a morsel to be had. Well, after 3 days of this, Crosby finally suggests the return match sort of thing, and takes damn good care to lose the lot. And then a plane came. Helicopter. Something like that. Anyway.
And this story was generally believed when Mr. Crosby told it.
Well, of course, there was a lot more to it as he related it, but oddly enough, people did believe it in a sort of way.
Did you?
Yes, I suppose I did.
Yes. Well, we have heard of others who were prepared to believe that Mr. Crosby was about to put £1 million into a football club. Do you remember anything about that, by the way?
Yes, he turned up at Melching's when all that business was in the papers, and we rather pulled his leg about it.
You mean you did not think he was a millionaire?
No, of course not. But he did surprise everybody, you see, because according to what he said, he was perfectly serious about it. If the club would meet his terms, except that he didn't think that they would.
He claimed to you that the offer was seriously intended?
Yes.
Did he claim to have the £1 million that was mentioned?
Well, no, he was quite frank. He didn't have it, but he could easily raise it for the scheme he had in mind. That's what he said.
And you believed him?
Well, I saw no reason not to.
Did he explain this scheme?
Yes, he said it was all to do with realizing the full value of the ground and whatnot, all very reasonable. There was something about a synthetic turf they were all going to play on. They do in America, apparently, and there's no limit to the things you can do on this stuff, but I didn't really follow all of that. And then something about Fulham could rent Chelsea's ground when they weren't playing and lease it out with this American turf stuff on it, and that would make much more money, but I can't really remember all of the details.
Mr. Crosby said all that?
Yes, he said the thing to be in was a combination of property and what he called the leisure industry, because both were due for a boom. Well, you can't say that he wasn't right.
Did he encourage those present to invest in his scheme?
Well, it wasn't as simple as that, no. He said that he'd inherited a bit of cash, and that was the sort of thing that he was going to do with it.
When you say a bit of cash, do you mean you got the idea that he'd inherited a lot of money?
Oh, yes, I suppose so.
More than £1,500, sir?
Oh, yes, I mean something substantial. And it did seem he's been doing rather well over those few months.
Why did you get that impression?
Oh, something about his manner. It wasn't that he was touting for people to invest in whatever it was. If anything, he was a bit cagey. But then people are cagey when they're making money. I suppose that was the clever thing, really.
Did you have any conversation with him about putting money into any of his schemes?
Yes, I did.
Could you tell us how that conversation went?
Yes, he told me the Land Hope Company had quite a bit of property in London and that it was still written in the books at 1950s valuations, but that a new audit would, you know, revalue them upwards, put a more realistic figure on them, and that, of course, would double the capital assets, which would be fine with anyone with the shares, if you follow that.
Oh, yes, I follow that. He was, in effect, advising you to buy Landhope Investment shares.
Yes, he was, but he said not to plunge in with both feet. Don't rock the boat, sort of thing. He didn't want them shooting up too fast. That's what he said. Well, I assumed he had reasons for that, wanting to get out of other holdings or whatever.
And as a result of all this, what did you do?
I bought shares in Landhope Investments. I believed what he told me.
How much did you invest at this time?
4,000, just to see how they went.
How did they go?
Up.
Then what did you do?
I bought some more.
You did, in fact, go in with both feet.
Well, not entirely, but I did carry on buying, yes.
How much did you eventually put into Landhope Investment shares?
Well, over a period of time, about 12,000.
Did you advise anybody else to buy these shares?
I did mention it to one or two of my friends.
And on your advice, did they buy?
I believe some of them did, yes.
And throughout 1972, while you and others were steadily buying these shares, what happened to them?
They went up.
I believe that is the usual result of steady buying, yes. Did you hear of anybody else buying these shares?
Well, Sir Reginald Watson Horrier told me that he'd bought some.
Do you remember any particular occasion on which you met Sir Reginald in Mr. Crosby's company?
Yes, he took us to lunch on one occasion. Crosby, I mean.
Can you tell us what happened on that occasion?
Yes, I came up to town by train, and Crosby met me with his car.
What kind of car did he have, by the way?
Oh, it was a Bentley at this time, I think. It was June of 1972.
Yes, please go on, Mr. Higgins.
Well, I remember Sir Reginald was in the car when I was met, and we took off to go to some place near Maidenhead. I remember we passed through a car wash on the way. He was quite odd like that. He couldn't pass a car wash without driving through it. I mean, wherever you went with Tommy, Mr. Crosby, you would go via a car wash. It was quite extraordinary.
What else occurred on this journey?
Yes, I remember we were going along somewhere near the Euston Road when suddenly he stopped and took us to look at a building site. It was just, you know, enormous holes in the ground with a great big, whatever it is that pours out the concrete. Absolute oceans of concrete. And he said how exciting it all was to see this going up, and that when it was finished, it would be an invaluable office building, and so on. And then we drove on to lunch. But I got the feeling that Crosby was connected with this building that was going on.
He gave you that impression?
Yes, he did.
Do you know whether Sir Reginald Watson Horrier sustained the same impression?
Well, I know he did, because not long ago he told me as much. But the funny thing is, you see, he thought that I was in it, together with Crosby, and I thought that he was.
Did either of you, in fact, have any connection with the development in question?
Not in the slightest.
And to the best of your knowledge, did Mr. Crosby have any connection with it?
Well, I've seen the building since, and I don't see how he could have. It's part of the university.
Did you invest in any other scheme of Mr. Crosby's?
Yes, in his Landhope Britannia Trust.
That was the unit trust he launched in August of 1972.
That's right, yes.
Obviously, you thought that this would be a sound investment. Why did you think that?
Well, the property business had gone mad, hadn't it? The value of everything was on a rocket. And it did seem that Crosby had managed to ride the crest of the whole thing.
How much did you put into this trust?
4,000.
Making a total of 16,000 invested with Mr. Crosby.
That's right.
What is the present value of those holdings?
Well, at the moment, they're not saleable. They don't yield anything. There may be something left after the receiver's gone through it all, but not very much.
You are saying that they are virtually worthless.
Yes, I am.
How do you feel about that, Mr. Higgins?
Cheated.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
Did you really believe the story about the Sheik of Araby?
I have said that.
Nicholas, it was a yarn for a rainy day. I certainly didn't expect it to be taken as gospel. I'm sure the jury can make up their own minds about that. You suggested that I contrived to give you and Sir Reginald Watson Horrier a simultaneous misconception about a building project. Do you still maintain that?
I stand by what I've said and all its implications.
I'm at a loss to know how I could have done that. How, with you standing beside me, could I have told Sir Reginald that you were my partner when you weren't?
That is the impression you conveyed.
Are you deaf, even slightly, perhaps in one ear?
No, I'm not.
To the best of your knowledge, is Sir Reginald hard of hearing?
No.
Then how could I have told you in his hearing that he was my partner when he wasn't?
I don't know how. There was a lot of noise on that building site. One had to raise one's voice to be heard. I didn't catch every word you uttered.
Oh, so not only did I carry out this impossible deception, but I did it yelling at the top of my voice. Well, the jury can make up their minds whether that's possible or not. Mr. Higgins, when your shares went up, you were very naturally gratified, I think. Weren't you?
Naturally.
And when they went down, you were dismayed, I suppose. Yes, well, these things are a gamble. It's in the nature of the stock exchange. A speculation can go either way. You won and then you lost. And that about sums it up, wouldn't you agree?
I don't think it's a gamble when one of the players runs off with the kitty. That's generally regarded as cheating.
I did not run away with the kitty, Mr. Higgins. A worldwide recession ran away with the kitty. The market that boomed in 1972 collapsed in 1973. Now, do you blame all that on me?
I don't think the recession had very much to do with it.
Nonetheless, it's an historical fact. When you lost heavily on shares in these companies, did you harbor any feelings of resentment towards me?
I can't deny that I did.
Did you have any other reason for feeling that way towards me?
No.
Of all my friends at that time, you are the only one to bring evidence against me. Isn't there another reason, apart from financial loss, for your resentment?
No, there isn't.
You are a homosexual, aren't you? Aren't you?
I don't see why it's necessary to mention that.
Well, you were once rather attracted to me, weren't you? How shall I say? We enjoyed a slightly flirtatious relationship, didn't we?
I wouldn't say that at all.
I'm not saying you did anything improper, Nicholas, and I confess I may have led you on. But you must admit we had a certain relationship, a close relationship.
Perhaps once.
And didn't you resent it when that relationship faded?
No.
Not when I became engaged to Cynthia Watson-Horry?
No.
You said some unkind things about her.
Well, I certainly don't remember doing so.
Did you never call her a spiteful little cow?
No, I did not. I may not have liked her, but that's neither here nor there, and I certainly didn't have a homosexual relationship with you.
We met, as I think you've said, at the old Russell Club. Now, that's well known in its way, isn't it?
It is a club where people go to play bridge.
And what else?
Nothing, as far as I'm aware.
I was once a member too, Nicholas. It's known as a homosexuals club, isn't it?
I don't think the members are exclusively one thing or another.
Not exclusively, no, and I'm not saying there is anything improper about the old Russell Club or anything that goes on in it. But I am saying that it is a gentleman's club and that the gentlemen it attracts include a large number of homosexuals. Well-heeled, eminently respectable homosexuals. Now, isn't that true?
Maybe to some extent.
Thank you. I'm not trying to distress you, Nicholas. These are just facts that I am prepared to face. I don't wish to press things any further than I have to.
I must say, my lord, it is not clear to me why Mr. Crosby needs to press this matter at all.
Yes, I think we might ask what bearing this has, Mr. Crosby.
My lord, nothing of this seems to me discreditable. Or if it is in any way, then surely it reflects equally upon me. But I think it does show to what extent the witness's memory of things may be colored by resentment. And perhaps it will explain why Mr. Higgins alone, of all the investors in the companies, is here to bring evidence against me today. Now, this evidence bears on aspects of my life which will show to the jury why I left the country in 1974. The prosecution has laid great emphasis on the fact that I did that, but the reasons are much more complicated than has appeared so far, and I think, my lord, that it is important for the jury to know these things.
I think I see your drift. You may carry on, Mr. Crosby.
Thank you, your lordship. Now, if we are to be frank about it, Nicholas, That's why I was invited down to Melching's in the first place, isn't it? Because you and I enjoyed the relationship we did.
Lord Stambleton invited you. I was hardly in a position to do that.
But I was invited as a friend of yours.
Well, yes, you may have been.
And that's why you took whatever I may have told you about Land Hope Investments as something of a privileged confidence, isn't it?
I took it as a confidence, yes.
And the fact is, you did exactly what I told you not to do, didn't you? You jumped in with both feet.
I bought shares, certainly.
Well, you bought them, it would seem, pretty eagerly. You hoped to make a good profit. And because of our relationship, you more or less thought that I had invited you to do so. Isn't that it?
No.
And you needed cash, didn't you?
We can all do with a little cash.
No, but you had specially pressing reasons for raising cash, didn't you?
Not that I'm aware of.
Have you ever been the victim of blackmail?
My lord, I have the strongest objection.
And well you might, Miss Madison. I cannot allow you to pursue criminal allegations that have nothing to do with the case, Mr. Crosby.
I'm sorry, my lord, I take back the question. But Mr. Higgins, for whom I have a great deal of respect, was very much a part of what the prosecution has called the circles in which I moved. We had things in common, not things that would endear us to everybody. The fact is that men with homosexual leanings can be very vulnerable to blackmail. Not as much as they were at one time, no, but it is still very easy for them to find themselves in that position, especially if they happen to be wealthy or eminent or hold positions of trust. Now, I don't know about Mr. Higgins' experience, but I can admit to the court that I was blackmailed. It was that mainly that caused my collapse. Not the collapse of my companies, though they must have been affected by what was happening to me, but the collapse of myself as a person. And if I ran away from everything that was falling down round me, that is why.
The cases in Fulchester are fictitious. You can join us again tomorrow when The Queen against Crosby will be concluded in the Crown Court. Ronald Devereux Edward Crosby is charged with inducing investments contrary to the Fraud Act of 1958. He pleads not guilty and is conducting his own defence. The jury in this case is selected from members of the public whose names appear on the electoral register and who are eligible for jury service. The trial is in its third day, and Crosby has chosen to make a statement on oath.
On the face of it, companies of which I was a director made money available to me for my own use. Not all of these loans were repaid. But a loan is not improper because it is not repaid. You have heard about loans that were repaid and repaid at commercially acceptable rates of interest. Those loans were not improper. Was it proper, in a broad sense, you may ask, for these companies to lend money to me at all? The answer is yes, because my expertise, my judgment, of what it was worth, was the major managerial asset those companies possessed. That indeed was the whole purpose, principle, if you like, of their existence. They did not exist to make shoes or toothpaste, but to manage money. And the skill in managing money on which they depended was my skill. Therefore, it was perfectly in order for me to deploy that money. Now, it would not have been proper if they had been hidden or not recorded. Now, that would have been like dipping into the petty cash. But they were recorded fully and openly in the company's accounts. Now, why were they not repaid? Because two things happened together. My personal collapse and the disastrous collapse of the market in which I worked. My breakdown is something I have to explain. I was under very great pressure in those 2 years, 1973, 74. You have heard a witness say I foresaw a boom. Well, like others, I also foresaw a crash. For me, as a man in whom others had placed their faith, the writing on the wall was very ominous. Not because I'd misused their money, but because I was expected to work impossible miracles with it. There was another pressure. I was engaged to be married to Cynthia Watson Horrier, the daughter of a well-respected politician, as I'm sure you know. When we met, I was generally thought to be rich and clever. By the date fixed for our marriage, I thought I could see that I might well be ruined, a failure. You know, too, that there were homosexual episodes in my past. Cynthia knew, and she was wise enough and mature enough and loved me enough to understand these things. But she did not know everything, and I did not have the courage to tell her everything, and I think that was my biggest weakness. Because there was something shameful in my past that I paid to keep hidden. I was blackmailed. And when finally I thought that Cynthia had abandoned me as well, I was wrong, but that's what I thought. When that happened, I broke down entirely and I ran. I did not run from my creditors or the law or my shareholders. I ran from all that failure. It crushed me, and I couldn't stand the pressure anymore. But that is not a crime. It may not have been very courageous, but at that point I had no courage left. Perhaps if I'd had a little, then the companies which depended on my financial courage might have been saved. But they weren't. They failed. And that is why I'm here today. Not because I cheated, but because I failed. Thank you for listening to me.
Why didn't you pay off your overdraft, Mr. Crosby?
What overdraft?
The one on your account at the Scottish Provincial, a very modest, well, modest by your standards, £158 in 1971. It is more now, of course.
I'm afraid it was something I overlooked.
Well, surely the bank must have sent you frequent or at least regular reminders.
I can't remember getting any, or I'd have dealt with it.
Well, the bank did send you statements, Mr. Crosby. I have copies before me now. 87 to 90 in the bundle, my lord.
I'm afraid they did not come to my attention.
Mr. Crosby, you're not the kind of man who runs away from his debts, are you? You are the kind who simply doesn't pay them if it doesn't feel like it.
No.
Tell us something about this blackmail business.
What do you want me to tell you?
Mr. Crosby, I have already made it clear that we need not go into this matter.
With respect, your lordship made that comment in connection with Mr. Higgins' evidence.
That is so, Miss Madison, but the spirit of what I said then applies here also.
I'm indebted to your lordship. Without going into details, Mr. Crosby, did you ever report the matter to the police?
It would involve a scandal, not just for me. Anyway, it wouldn't matter to me anymore. It would involve other people as well, and I don't wish to do that. The worst of it was I never knew. I still don't know who it was.
You tell us you paid large sums in cash to a blackmailer without ever knowing who that was? How did you make these payments?
I used to receive ridiculous, complicated instructions. Almost always I had to leave the money on trains, in empty compartments. After I left the money, I then left the train.
The police will no doubt be interested in these allegations. They will wish to investigate. Will you assist them?
As far as I can, I suppose so.
You suppose so? Did you ever think of going to the police before?
Of course I did. I thought about that and every other possibility.
Oh, what other possibilities?
Like doing away with myself.
Yes, I can see that it must have been depressing. Do you still, from time to time, think of doing away with yourself?
No. Because oddly enough, the problems that depressed me no longer overwhelm me. It's ironical, but being bankrupt is a great relief in many ways.
Bankrupt? But you're not a bankrupt, are you?
I was using the word loosely, not technically.
I would have thought you were using the word very loosely indeed if you mean that you have no money. Now, I have made an edition of your drawings, your profits on share dealings, the unrepaid loans and so on in the 3 years before you left the country. I think my arithmetic is on the conservative side. I arrive at a figure of £338,000. Has it all gone?
That's an imaginary figure.
The figures I have used are a matter of record. Do you accept that this amount came into your hands?
You're including a lot of money I owe. That's not money I have.
You could hardly owe it without having had it.
I thought you were suggesting it was money I had now. It has been pointed out. I used to spend pretty freely. The way I lived then has been described.
But much of that was supported by your company expenses, which I have not included. You spent a good deal, yes. But £1/3 of £1 million? Really?
It's gone.
However little remains, what do you have left?
When the creditors have been paid, I will have nothing at all.
How much do you have to give the creditors?
Oh, I was thinking of the assets of the companies, my house and so forth.
And I am talking about money, Mr. Crosby, like the money you draw from Corning's Bank in Lombard Street. £117,000 from your current account, £16,000 from your deposit account. Now, what became of that? Did you leave that on a train?
Some of it.
How much of it?
20,000. No, I'm sorry, 25,000.
Still, not such a large slice to leave on a train, so British Rail did not go away with £133,000.
You're forgetting about tax. You see, capital gains tax accounts for almost all the rest.
Oh, you're saying you paid your tax on capital gains before you left and you paid it in cash?
No, I am not saying that. My tax for those last 2 years is still in dispute. But I think, when it's agreed, that's probably the sum I will have to find.
And you have put it by?
I have made provision, yes.
Then where is it?
In a bank account in Guernsey.
Now this is news. I wonder why you have never mentioned this before. It is surely an asset that the receiver ought to know about.
No, I regard that as the taxman's money, not mine.
Then what is it doing in Guernsey? Why not leave it just as cosily in Lombard Street?
Because I did not want it to be confused with the assets of Realm and Landhope Securities, and I'll tell you why. If, and I say if, I am found to have contravened the Companies Act, I will pay fines amounting to 100 or 2. But I am certain enough of my innocence of any charge of fraud that I do not fear the outcome of this trial. But if I cannot find the money to pay the taxman, I will go to jail, and I don't want to, so I made provision.
Your forethought is an example to us all, Mr. Crosby.
Thank you.
But it occurs to me that you had this uncommonly large sum of money in a current account. Now, the bank would pay no interest on money in a current account. It is exactly the money that would not automatically come to the taxman's notice. Isn't that odd? On that note, Mr. Crosby, let me follow your lead back to fraud. You did induce Mr. Higgins to buy Landhope shares, did you not?
I advised him. He could have taken other advice.
Were you confident that he would pass this advice on to others?
I didn't ask him to, quite the reverse.
Nonetheless, you might have known that he would. I mean, you have explained that you knew him quite well.
I had no way of knowing that he would pass on what I told him.
Oh, surely you knew him well enough to be able to estimate his discretion in that way.
I am obviously not that wise.
And I put it to you that you are that wise, Mr. Crosby, and that you told him what you did in the near certain hope that he would pass it on to his friends.
That is just not so.
You gave him the impression that you had inherited property in London.
I had.
Oh, yes, a 57-year lease on a house of uncertain value. It's property, yes, but it's not what Mr. Higgins thought you meant by property, now is it?
Well, Mr. Higgins may have misunderstood.
Or you may have exaggerated. I put it to you that you exaggerated a great deal.
No, I don't think I did.
Oh, did you say, look here, I've just inherited a 57-year lease on a fairly unprepossessing house. I have made it over to a company of mine which has no other assets. Why don't you buy shares in it? Is that the way the conversation went?
Obviously not.
Very obviously not.
Landhope Investments did buy other property.
Yes, later it did. But at that time, when you spoke to Mr. Higgins, it had none to speak of. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Yes, and you started by telling it all story in your usual plausible way, and the money you got in that way was the foundation of your success, now wasn't it?
By no means.
I put it to you that it was, Mr. Crosby, but when Mr. Sayer, your auditor, discovered that your accounts were really not quite as plausible as you were, Then you ran away, didn't you?
Yes, I ran away. I did run away. But not because I'd defrauded people, because I'd failed people, all sorts of people, including myself. I don't know whether you'd understand that.
Because you were depressed or lovelorn, paying a blackmailer. Mr. Crosby, I put it to you that you ran away because your fiddle was in essence so crude that when the time came, there was nothing else for it. You took your money and you ran, didn't you?
I had very little money left by then.
Oh, yes, of course. I mean, you'd given so much to a blackmailer, hadn't you?
A lot of it went that way, yes.
Oh, really, Mr. Crosby, there was no blackmailer. It's all my eye, isn't it?
TV lawyers.
Lord Stambleton, did you ever put money into any company headed by me?
Yes. I had a few thousand shares in Land Hope at one time.
And were you happy with that investment?
Yes, I think I made a modest profit on them.
What made you buy them?
I bought them on the advice of my broker,
And who is your broker?
Cecil Hampson of Dawes and Harris.
Are you sure that you didn't buy them at my instigation or because of any suggestion of mine?
The only advice I listen to is Cecil's. I mean, people are always advising one about what to do with one's money. I don't listen. I leave it all to Cecil.
And are Dawes and Harris a reputable firm of brokers?
Absolutely.
So you bought shares in a company of mine on advice of the best and most reputable kind?
That's fair to say, yes.
Did I ever offer you advice about what to do with your money?
You didn't. It's a great thing in your favor. Lots of people do.
Lord Stambleton, I dislike mentioning this, but you are one of the richest men I know. Now, did I ever, by false pretenses or real pretenses, whatever they might be, induce you to part with a penny?
Only at cards.
And how long have you known me?
About 7 years or so. Is that about right?
I think you have to say how long.
About that, my lord.
Then you have seen my rise and you have seen my fall. You know how others have reacted towards me. You are obviously aware of what this trial might mean to me. How do you feel towards me now?
I regard you as a friend.
Does nothing that you now know strain your loyalty as a friend in any way?
No. I do not believe you've done anything dishonorable.
Even though you know that a great many people lost money in my company.
The world is full of bad losers. If you can't bear a loss, then you shouldn't take a risk, and I think that's all there is to it.
Were you surprised when I left the country?
Not altogether, no.
Why weren't you?
I knew you'd been under a lot of strain, and, well, you'd taken rather a lot of knocks.
Was there a particular time at which you learned my state of mind?
Yes. We had dinner not long before you left, I believe. You were rather full of your troubles.
How would you describe my state of mind at that time?
Very distraught. You seemed to believe that the knives were out, that they were after you for their pound of flesh.
Well, the prosecution paint a picture of me as a piratical speculator gleefully running away with his plunder. Is that how I seem to you?
No. You were extremely distraught and depressed at the time.
Did I ever mention the subject of blackmail?
Well, the word came up.
What did you think I meant by it?
At the time, I thought it was another way of saying they were out to get you. I didn't realize you meant actual blackmail.
But the subject came up.
Yes.
And did you offer me any advice?
I thought you ought to take a holiday, go abroad.
Did you think that you were suggesting something dishonorable when you said that?
Certainly not. I was extremely concerned for your health. I thought you were heading for a nervous breakdown.
And that was my state at the time.
Very much so.
Thank you, Lord Stambleton.
Where did you eat, by the way, when you dined on this occasion?
I believe at the, Quai d'Orsay.
That is a very expensive restaurant, is it not?
Yes. But the food's good.
And Mr. Crosby, was he up to it? I mean, his troubles hadn't spoiled his appetite for the haute cuisine.
Well, I think that's a little unfair. A man still has to eat.
I gather he often ate at Melching's. He was a regular guest.
Yes,
Together with Mr. Higgins.
at that time.
They were very friendly, I gather. Do you know Mr. Higgins well?
Yes.
Is Mr. Higgins a man that you would trust with a confidence?
Well, that's rather hard to say.
And I am asking you to say on oath, Lord Stambleton, whether you think Mr. Higgins is a discreet man.
Not the most discreet man in the world, no.
No. But he was the man that Mr. Crosby chose to excite with tales of his supposedly wonderful shares. I mean, he didn't tell you.
No.
No. Perhaps you are too discreet a man for such a confidence, Lord Stambleton. Thank you.
Miss Watson Horrier, would you say you knew me well?
Yes.
When was it we first met?
In 1972, at a party that Nicholas Higgins gave.
Did you like me when we first met?
Not very much, no.
Why not?
I thought you were one of those awful people who just made money all the time.
Why did you think that?
Because everybody said it, I suppose. They said you were very clever and you made a lot of money.
And that I was pretty awful.
Oh, no, no. People said that you were... I don't know, that you were such a very charming man. That put me off.
Don't you like people to be charming?
Well, I often don't like what people mean by charm. It's a very thin sort of thing.
And you don't like clever people who make money either?
Oh, yes, I do like clever people. But not when that's all they do.
So I started off in a rather poor light in your eyes.
Yes.
Because of, if you like, my advanced publicity.
Yes.
Seems to be something that happens to me. But after that rather hostile start, we became very close, as everybody knows. Your father is an eminent, respected man. What was his opinion of our relationship? Did he express an opinion?
Only when he knew that you were practically living in my flat.
What did he say then?
He said we ought to get married if that was how we wanted to carry on.
And when we became engaged, was he in favour of the idea?
Yes. Well, until everything started to go wrong for you. Then he was against it, very definitely.
Did that idea change your feelings at all?
No.
Not at all?
Not in any way.
Then where were you in the summer of 1974?
In Ibiza. We have a house there, my family have.
Why were you there while I was here with everything crumbling about me?
Well, you were supposed to come out there too. You couldn't because of everything. And I was... well, I was kept there by my family.
Against your will?
Yes.
Surely not by force.
Well, no, not by force. Families can use all kinds of force. There was a kind of emotional blackmail. There was a lot of that. And my money.
Your money?
Well, my money was in trust for me until I was 25. But without my father's consent, I couldn't have it until I was 30.
And how old were you then?
24.
And they put pressure on you about that?
Yes.
Did you particularly want the money that following year?
Yes. Because of the things you'd said, I knew we might very well need it.
Oh, what sort of things had I said?
Well, you said that everything was going so badly and collapsing, you might even end up being broke.
Was I quite frank about that?
Completely.
You were closer to me than anyone else in life. What impression did you have? What did you think I was doing in that last year when things went so badly?
I knew that you were absolutely fighting to keep going.
Did you ever hear me say or suggest that I knew of improper or illegal dealings in any of my companies?
Never.
Or that I might run away from my responsibilities?
No. I knew that you felt awfully responsible for everyone, even though you weren't.
I am being accused of fraud. Now, taking account of everything you know of me, everything, is that something you can believe?
No.
That's all.
Have you any questions of this witness, Miss Madison?
Well, I can't think that the witness has said anything very much to the point, my lord. Mr. Crosby seems to be under the impression that he's being tried because he left the country, whereas I am interested in events long before that. Yes, I will ask. Are you still in love with Mr. Crosby?
In love is a silly expression. I do love him, yes.
Forgive my silly expression. Do you still hope to marry him?
Yes, when all this is over.
Are you interested in business matters?
I'm not very interested in making money.
Did Mr. Crosby tend to bore you, then, with lengthy explanations of all those business dealings?
No, of course not. But I knew what his business was about.
Without being really interested in business or making money? You're not an accountant, by any chance?
No.
Then it would seem that you are less than competent to comment on how Mr. Crosby ran his business affairs. What you say may be very touching, but it doesn't carry weight. I have nothing further, my lord.
You may leave the witness box, Miss Watson-Horia. Thank you very much. Have you any further witnesses to call, Mr. Crosby?
No, my lord.
And then you will remember, members of the jury, that there was a dinner party at which Mr. Crosby spoke in glowing terms about the prospects for his company. But you should bear in mind that nothing that is said about the future prospects of a company can be fraudulent, for there can be no lies about the future. On the other hand, you should ask yourselves whether perhaps Mr. Crosby did not greatly exaggerate the present position and assets of his company. You must use your common sense and experience of the world, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, to decide what evidence you will accept and what you will reject. For you are the sole judges of what is fact, just as I am the judge of what is law. And you should bear in mind.
Will your foreman please stand? Have you reached a verdict upon which all of you are agreed? Please answer yes or no.
Yes.
What is your verdict? Please answer, do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
The cases in Fulchester are fictitious. You can join us again when our cameras return to bring you another leading case in the Crown Court.